David Cohen, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This is a great atmosphere here at Startup Week. We're at 1900 Lawrence and lots going on. We've got main stage and we have the opportunity to do a few interviews. So I'm glad you could join us.
I'm just coming off the main stage, so I'm trying to calm it down and chill it out. There's not a big crowd anymore, just us.
It's nice. Just us. Well, that's good because I want to talk to you about the importance of hearing from leaders in the community at Startup Week and Startup Week in general. What's this mean to Colorado?
Yeah, I mean, Startup Week happens every year. It also happens in Boulder, a smaller version of it. It is really important for the community to celebrate entrepreneurship. And that's what's really happening here, right? You're hearing the stories of not only success, but also valiant attempts and failure in some case, and what people learn from that. And I think we get together and we hear those stories and it builds community. People are more willing to help each other. We really talk a lot about the idea of give first here in Colorado, being helpful to others without any expectation of anything specific. It's not a transaction. I just want to give into the system. And when people know each other and spend time together, they're more likely to do that. So I think it brings us together and celebrates what is happening with founders here.
I agree. And we're known for collaboration in Colorado. And so it kind of fits into that ethos. I always feel like we've got a small community, even though, it's the large population. You pick up a phone and you can get to somebody that's 2 degrees of separations or so.
And what makes Colorado special is that they pick up the phone and they answer it and then they say, how can I help? And I think that is different than most startup communities. And really that is the secret weapon of every successful startup community, that people are willing to, give without any expectation of necessarily getting something back. And they probably will get something back. They just don't know what it is. Right.
And so the surprise of that is glorious to me.
It's unexpected and helpful. And it's not necessarily even from the same person. It might be from your reputation in being helpful that is the reason that you then get help from someone else.
Yeah. I had a dinner one time at my house and there were a lot of people there that I didn't know. And on the way out the door, I asked this woman, what do you do? She's like, doing AR for an aerospace company. I'm like, come back, I want to talk to you. And we wound up having a very long-term relationship talking about AR and what it can do societally. So you've worked in Colorado for a long time. You've lived in Boulder for a long time. You've also worked outside of Colorado. We talked about some of the things that make Colorado unique in a positive way. What are some of the things that we need to work on here?
Well, anywhere you go in the world and you're around founders or entrepreneurs, you're going to hear, there's not enough capital available. We've come a long way. I mean, there's a lot of really great venture funds that have been created and built here and are being scaled here. But I think as importantly, maybe more importantly, are the connections that this community is building. And so I think we need to continue doing that. We need to build the bridges to, the Bay Area and New York and Boston and London and other places. We have plenty of them. We need more because that's what then attracts the co-investors. It attracts the mentorship, the talent, right? People hear the stories because they're connected. So we need to always be working on our interconnectivity to other communities.
Yeah, I like that. And I also feel like we've lifted up from a capital perspective. And so we're getting more money coming into our founders so that it's not, money coming off the coast necessarily and getting to a certain point and it's like, oh, we aren't headquartered here anymore. I'm hoping that's what we'll see as more headquarters stay longer.
Well, it's an interesting one. I mean, we were investors in a company called SendGrid that, went through our accelerator here. I was on the board until it IPO'd. It was known as this Colorado success story. The founders were from LA and elsewhere, and they ended up moving their headquarters to the Bay Area. But that connectivity is lasting, even though they did that. Right? They got acquired by Twilio. They became more of a Bay Area thing. But I just saw the founder yesterday in Colorado. Right? He's still investing in things that are here and contributing. So, it helps even if they don't stay. But of course, we want them to stay. It at least have a presence here, and I think we are seeing more and more of that.
How long have you been in the funder side of the entrepreneurial environment?
I started as an angel investor around 2005, so 20-ish years, and then Techstars was born in 2007.
So you've got a pretty big sample size.
We're investors in around 5,000 companies globally. Yeah.
I know when founders go in to do a first pitch, it's really unnerving. What advice would you give to founders, and what really piques your interest?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I'd say, you got to make sure that someone listening to your pitch has a reason to care, right? Like, why should they care about this thing? If they're an investor, what are they going to care about? Building a big world-changing company. And so, it's really about storytelling. It's about a vision of the future. It's always often about the team, who you are when you're pitching. Those are the key things. And when I practice this or coach people, around this, it's always like, you have 60 seconds, right, to get across to me why I should care, what you're doing, make it clear what your vision is and who you are and why you were put on this earth to do it, right? 60 seconds. Otherwise, I'm going to pull out my phone and I'm going to start playing with my email, right? Like, you've got to capture my interest quickly. So that's the difference for a lot of people, is just being clear about what that story is.
Do you just feel the passion? Is it a matter of yeah.
When I first was pitched Uber, I was an angel investor in Uber, for example. In 60 seconds, I was like, wow, this is either going to be horribly stupid and fail, which are often the good ones, or it's going to change the world. The pitch was simple. I'm building a company that can get you a car in 30 seconds. You're holding a powerful computer. It knows where you are. You don't need to walk to the hotel to get a taxi. We're Uber Cab. We can. And it was like, yeah, we're going to deliver that and change the world. And you just sort of felt like they might do that, or it might fail. Either one is okay. I'm here to take risk, right? But if it works, what if? What would the world look like in 20 years? And today it's a product we all use.
Yeah, it's amazing. The other thing I would have to ask is, what are the mistakes that you don't like to see when you're talking to somebody? They've got to get your attention in 60 seconds.
Yeah.
But what are some of the common mistakes that founders make?
I would say not knowing who else is in your space. It's sort of, you want to build confidence. And when I say, I saw a company like this the other day, let's say Uber was pitching me, I saw this company Lyft, right, that was doing something similar. How are you different? And they're like, I don't know who that is. I think you really need to know your, competitors, and not only now, but the ones that might have tried in the past. Why didn't it work? Was that timing? Was that a failure in some other way? Because the investor is likely to have researched that, right, to try to understand the market. The fact that they've taken the meeting means they're kind of interested. So that's one. Another is any kind of extreme over-positioning, bordering perhaps on lying. I'm going to figure that out, and that's not somebody that I really want to work with or how I want to start a relationship. So, marketing, of course, is natural and okay, but you're going to tell me something that I find out isn't true or really stretch the truth, that's going to be uninteresting to me.
Yeah, I feel the same way about any relationship. So that makes sense that would be one that would really hit you. So you create a relationship as a funder with a founder. What are some of the key attributes that you're looking for that funder to move forward on? And I would think that mentorship also would be part of that. So what are some of the things that you would expect?
Yeah, I mean, after that first meeting, I'm probably thinking a lot about, how do they execute, right? Like, okay, I like the idea, I like the people, this feels interesting and exciting. Now, do they do stuff, right? Because I have this theory, and I'm pretty sure it's true, that entrepreneurs actually do stuff, right? They don't wait for permission from someone. Right. And I was just talking to a founder that was telling the story that when we invested, they didn't know how to code, and it was a software company. Right? But they taught themselves how to code while we were considering investing, and they built a prototype. And it was crappy and terrible and didn't work, but they were running through that brick wall, and that's what entrepreneurs do. They figure out how to make progress even without resources. And so I want to work with them a little bit. One of the things I might do is introduce a mentor. A mentor is just someone that has specific experience in an area that's willing to share it and doesn't really want anything. They're willing to give first. And so if I connect you to someone that might have relationships or knowledge in an area, now they get to work with them, and let's see what that entrepreneur does with that. Let's see what they turn that into, right? Here's a new resource, a new introduction, or a new set of experiences to make the product better. Then I want to hear how that's reflected back. How are we making progress? Where are we going? If the answer is, well, I introduced them and they didn't ever reach out or connect with the person, it's like, okay, I'm not going to be able to be helpful, right? If you're not going to follow through and do what founders do. So you're just testing and, trying to find, their ability to execute, I think.
Yeah, I find that I like being a mentor. I like being mentored, and I find that it's not a hierarchical thing.
No.
It's part of building the ecosystem that you need.
I just said in the room to the crowd, everybody here is a mentor. You can turn to your left and right, and you have something to teach those two people, for sure. You're better at something than they are.
Yeah.
Right. And if the whole community takes that attitude, it's super powerful.
I think so too. And I'm usually the oldest person in the room, and I get more from working with this intergenerational ecosystem than, I feel like I need to pay somebody for it sometimes.
Yeah, hopefully you don't.
Yeah, no, I don't. I get a lot of advice from my daughters. So, one of your quotes that I really liked was, if your mentor gives you advice and you follow it and you fail, it's still your fault. So there's an element that you believe in personal responsibility. So yeah. Along with follow through and all of that, the ownership seems to be important to you too.
Yeah, and with mentorship, and of course that's what Techstars is all about. That's my investment business. We have thousands and thousands of experienced mentors that help founders be successful. It's really just data. It's just input, right? When a mentor says, here's my experience. I faced this problem. Here's what I did. It worked, or it didn't work. That's all data, right? And your job as the founder or entrepreneur in this case is to process all of that data and then make your own decision. And the best mentors are very, very happy for you to say, I disagree with that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make the other choice. Fine. The mentor gets to learn either way. The mentor gets new data either way, and it's symbiotic and helpful, right? Even if you decide not to do it. Where it doesn't help is when you decide not to do it, but you give them no feedback. You don't tell them you're going to go the other direction. Yeah. You say, I considered that input. I heard different things from different people. I'm going to choose door number 2, and I'm going to let you know how it goes. They still learn. They still feel involved in the process. And the best mentor will not say, I told you so. The best mentor will say, okay, here's some different ideas, right? And I learned from that as well. So mentors, don't forget, are also wanting to learn. That's their motivation in many cases.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because when I've gotten advice, sometimes it may be good advice, but I don't think it fits for my situation.
Completely, yeah. And I think you need to be really, weary of a mentor who says, well, this is the answer. This is what you need to do. This is what you should do. Versus a mentor who says, here's what I did in that situation. Here's what I learned and what the outcome was. Right? Yeah. Because just because it worked in that situation doesn't mean it's going to work in yours.
Or I wish I'd thought about this at the time. Yeah.
Guess what? These are non-deterministic startups. It's not a puzzle to solve, like a jigsaw puzzle on a table. They're all different, right? And different situations are going to need different answers.
Yeah. One of the things that I find interesting also in this space is that over the last few years, when you talk to a founder, you'd often hear one of the first things out of their mouth, I'm at Series A, this is what we're doing, and then I got to get to Series B. And it was all about the process of funding rather than talking about the business. And also how my exit was going to look. And I'm like, I'm not really interested in talking about your exit. So have you seen a change in that conversation over years?
I think it's different in different places. I think the startup communities and the level of experience in them mature. I've seen it here as we've matured, where it's not, my job is not to raise the Series B. My job is to make progress with my business such that capital is inevitably going to be there when I need it. Right? You're always trying to get to the next business milestone. And so I think the community has learned to speak about it that way and learn that investors probably react better to, hey, if you invest, here's what I'm going to accomplish. It's not, I'm going to accomplish getting to my Series C, because that's a moving target, right? Depends on how the capital market works or whatever. I'm going to get to 20 million in revenue, very tangible thing, or I'm going to become profitable. So I am seeing it here, but in different places you don't see it. Right? It's an evolution for different places, I think.
Well, I don't know if it's a maturity on the funding side or just a change in the environment from that too. I've witnessed where startups get a lot of money up front, and the funder is expecting to spend the money to get customers that may or may not be viable customers.
Yeah, I mean, when the investor is going to put in, $20 million, but you're not really ready for it, it creates a pressure to spend it, use it, and you may not have product market fit yet. And those are really dangerous situations. I've seen it kill portfolio companies that we've invested in. Just too much too soon. And it's one of the reasons why we invest a little bit of capital and a lot of mentorship in the very beginning. And then we follow on as companies make progress. That mentality with investors comes and goes depending on, the fads of the day. 5-7 years ago, you were seeing, a lot of $100 million checks, right? You got to go spend it, use it quickly. We were coaching the founders, you got to be you. Right, everybody else is taken, I think is the language.
Yeah.
If you're not the type of founder that wants to go and try a bunch of experiments at once, but you want to, produce that product market fit and then scale it, that may not be the right thing for you to do, as exciting as it sounds. That's starting to come back in the age of AI, which of course is just software, but it's smarter software. You're starting to see these mega rounds again, right? We'll see it with quantum computing and other things like that, where, I'm going to put all my chips on the table, right? Make a huge bet because I really believe in this person. Usually the investor has worked with that person before, so they have familiarity. That's why they offer so much money. But it can be a really dangerous dynamic for the wrong company at the wrong time.
Yeah, quantum is a great example of the enormous amount of money that needs to go in from a development perspective. And I kind of feel like there's going to be some breakthrough there that will be almost like DNA sequencing from Illumina that is going to be the rocket ship on it. And it may, I'm going to test this out on you, it may not be quantum itself. It may be an enabling technology.
I think the way to think about it is, we just did a session on this at FounderCon, which is our annual Techstars conference. Dan Caruso and 3 of the investments he's made in this space were there talking about it. And I love what Dan said about it. It's hard for people to understand what quantum computing really implies. No one really understands quantum mechanics, right? If you took all of the computers in the world today and all of the compute power, and you took AI and you let it evolve for 100 years, he said it wouldn't be able to match one quantum computer, right? It just is a different level of capability of compute, of problem solving. It has enormous implications around, healthcare, longevity, aging, disease being eradicated. I mean, I think it has implications on lifespan, life expectancy, quality of life. It's just computing when you really, sort of factor everything out, but ultimately, it's just another level of capability that when you combine it with AI, which is just really smart software, sky's the limit. I mean, we're going to solve a lot of incredible problems when that's real.
Yeah, it's very difficult to think about. Not the technology itself. The implication of the technology is very difficult to think about. I recently was listening to a podcast where Mark Cuban was being interviewed, and one of the things that he talks a lot about is profitability. He's not looking at the ability to get top line revenue, going back to the conversation about spending much money to buy customers, but really looking at profitability and also in those early stages, cash flow. And it made me feel good because I kind of feel like it's going back to the basics of business. Are you feeling that too? I mean,
well, I think Mark is totally right in terms of like the business needs to be able to operate profitably should it choose to do so. That's my add to it. I think there are situations where businesses in the right way choose to not be profitable, and I've been on those sorts of boards and. You're investing in, market share and capture, and so you're not profitable. But the difference is you could be overnight if you wanted to be, right? And I think that's the nuance in what I've heard Mark talk about that I would add as an and. Now, generally speaking, this is a pendulum that swings back and forth as the capital markets, come and go, and the IPO markets open and close. It becomes fashionable for investors to say, whatever, we don't need to be profitable, just invest. And I mean, I told you I was involved with Uber, and they were not profitable for a very long time. But I think they thought we could be if we wanted to be, right? They were really investing in the growth, and that was the right decision. That company is very valuable because of that. It's when companies that don't have that same opportunity, right, choose to operate EBITDA negative, right, for a long time. They don't have a path to profitability. I think that's problematic. So I think he's pointing out, not only are we in the swing of the pendulum that it's fashionable to say be profitable, the ability to do so at any moment is what really matters. If you have that, then it's okay not to be.
Well, and Uber is a great example because they were making a market. And if, or you were making a market.
It was them,
But it's really interesting. I mean, back years ago, that was Sun Microsystems. Sun Microsystems was changing compute in the mid-market, and first to volume was all they talked about. And so for Uber to hold back and say, I need to get my profit, they would have never been.
Because in one city, where they first launched in San Francisco or New York, right, it's very actually hard to become profitable. They were paying the drivers to create the market awareness, right? And it was all black cars back then. They needed to evolve the model so that it was everybody's car. You didn't get a ride from your neighbor. And, it's only at that scale that they easily could then achieve profitability. They chose to do so eventually, but not for a long time, and that was the right call.
Well, it's interesting. David, thank you so much for coming in and spending some time with us. I have one more question as we close. We've got a lot of tumultuous things happening in our world right now. If you were going to give a little bit of a view into the next 12 to 18 months and what this looks like for accessibility to capital and, what the a founder's experience is going to be based on the environment. Do you have any tea leaves that you're reading?
Not really. I think that the advice I would give is, these are exogenous factors, right? You can't control how the capital market is going to behave broadly. What you can control is your own business, right? And so in the wave we're going through with AI and huge technology changes, one thing that's going to be valuable is going to be network, who you surround yourself with, who is on your team and in your gang, and maybe that's your board and your investors and your early customers and your employees, really, really matters. And you can control that, right? And if you do a good job with that, you will be able to access capital 2 or 3 times better than somebody else in a good market or a bad market, which you don't know which one of those are coming, right? And so focus on what you can control is what I would say, and build the best business you can with the best team around it you can. Those human relationships are valuable even in the age of AI.
I agree. Well, thank you, David.
Thank you so much.